Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Business Insights. Business Insights is an initiative developed by the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce, which offers knowledge and insights of successful entrepreneurs and business people, and offers training for business by business. Today's segment is sponsored by Guardian Group and is entitled Critical Illness, Non-Communicable Diseases, and Keyman Insurance. We have with us today our panel from the Life, Health, and Pension arm of the Guardian Group, Mr. Michael Austin, Vice President of Sales and Marketing, Mr. Calvin Mendez, Assistant Branch Manager and Senior Sales Consultant from Mr. Dale McLeod's agency, Ms. Mrinalini Supasad, Senior Sales Consultant from Larry Gokul's branch, and Mr. Clinton Corbin, Unit Manager and Senior Sales Consultant from Mr. Vernon Fingal's branch. Welcome all.
Thank you.
Michael, just start a little bit about NCDs, which are non-communicable diseases. We understand that they pose a great threat to, and a sustained threat to the stability of health systems worldwide. And, you know, health systems are increasing in cost faster than we can keep up with them. Is there a way that we can cope with them? And what is a non-communicable disease and why focus on it?
Well, thank you for having us on the program today to share. A non-communicable disease is really a disease of really long duration and one that usually progresses very slowly. So by definition, it would require significant funds to manage. All right? The usual diseases referred to would be heart attack, stroke, cancer, respiratory diseases, diabetes. Those are the 5 main ones, which are sometimes called critical illnesses. All right? And these worldwide are posing a threat to health systems and so on because of the nature. It requires significant costs, as I said before, and it is increasing tremendously for populations worldwide. So that in itself, it can create a strain on health systems.
What about right here in Trinidad and Tobago? How is that impacting us?
Well, it impacts us on 2 fronts. On the individual front, for persons, because we have seen an increase in these type of illnesses. As a matter of fact, if I were to quote some of the numbers just from Guardian Life, own experience, in total over the last 15 years, of the 5 illnesses I mentioned before, 89% of all claims paid by Guardian Life represented those critical illnesses. Cancer, 49%, heart attack, 21%, stroke, 8%, permanent disability, 4% of the like. So just, if this is just Guardian Life's experience, one can just imagine what it is in the entire country.
Right. Just to drill down a bit, what do you think is the impact of NCDs on businesses and individuals?
Well, from the individual point of view, it means that persons who are trying to manage these illnesses, assuming they have the funds to do so, all right? It means that it's time away from work. It's time away sometimes from doing their normal day-to-day affairs at the homes and so on. It is a financial strain. In some instances, if there are no provisions in place from the individual point of view, it can actually bankrupt. All right? From the business point of view, the fact is businesses are made up of people. And most businesses, particularly smaller businesses, depend on key persons for the success of that business. If any of these key persons became critically ill, one of these NCDs, it means that it can impact the business financially. So there are products in the market that businesses access, that will compensate, that will allow for business continuity and business protection.
And just to add to what Mike just mentioned, other impacts to the business would be in terms of the management. The management of the organization will be affected because if that key person who is running the organization is sick because of an incident, and especially if they're involved in the planning of any goals or any strategic projects that the business may have, and they are sick, then the organization will have to replace that person. And that will cause a disruption in management. And of course, there will always be a settling period for the organization to go through while this new person that they will have to get seeks to familiarize herself with the new organization. Also, in terms of the relationship that this business would have established with credit companies, like the banks and so forth, that will be affected as well. Because the banks will want to know that that the organization will continue to meet its obligations, because obviously the relationship is with its key person, and if that person is not there, then that relationship could be affected. So the bank will want to know that that the organization, will continue into the future even with the sickness of this individual. Right? Calvin, have anything else you'd like to share? I mean, I could continue in terms of loss of confidence as well. With the loss of a key person, loss of confidence in terms of it will cause some unsettling on behalf of the staff. Because I'm looking at this organization and the key person is not there, is not well. So the staff, sometimes what will happen is staff would look to other organizations in terms of their future, right? So it impacts the business. It could impact the business very negatively if things are not put in place to deal with this impact. And there is where the Keyman insurance will come in to help mitigate that disturbance that will happen as a result of an NCD to one of the key persons within the organization.
So maybe Calvin can tell us about some of the provisions that will allow, particularly the SMEs, the small businesses, to mitigate against these situations.
Thanks, Mike. I think before I even answer that question, I think one of the things that we need to clear up is that there's a big misconception between having critical illness coverage and having health insurance coverage. A lot of employers take in front, or should I say, do the right thing and cover their employees for health insurance, which actually pays your medical bills. And we know that that cost is in billions when it comes to Trinidad and Tobago. Now, while health insurance will pay your medical bills, there's still a huge financial gap in paying your personal bills. So as Quinton was mentioning that, banks, sometimes they may get a little nervous because as we like to say, or should I say, as I like to say in the insurance industry, that there are worse things than dying, right? And you work hard, you build your business, it's your dream, you value it, and to be critically ill and not be able to function in your business and watch your business die while you are critically ill, that I'm very, very sure it's very, very, very painful. So what critical illness does is that it gives an immediate injection of cash to the individual or to the company to help clear off whether it is all your liabilities, or even let the company have that comfort level of knowing that they actually have a substantial amount of cash so that the business could actually continue, even though the owner of the company actually could be bedridden or not be able to function in the full capacity in his role. I mean, and there are many ways that we could actually calculate those things, which is sitting with your advisor and we look and see exactly what your personal situation is. So it's not to say that we actually have a general plan or a general product that you just for everybody. It's actually a solution to a problem, and everybody's problem would actually be extremely different. So, hence you have your advisors and you sit and you chat with your advisors. So health insurance pays your medical bills, critical illness insurance pays your bills, whether it's from an individual perspective or from a company perspective. So, I mean, even as Mike spoke about that, what we've seen in Guardian over the last 15 years, the 5 major illnesses that we see, I mean, we've paid more than $10 million a year in critical illness coverage. That's just from critical illness alone. And we look and see that of that, 49% of that alone was cancer. So cancer is a serious problem, I guess, as we all know, is a serious problem in Trinidad and Tobago. But added to which, what we've found is that 89% of those claims that we've paid actually came from people under the age of 50. So people think, critical illness actually comes from you have to be old, right? And sometimes we think 65 and 70 years old. I mean, there's some 70 years old I can't run with around the savannah. So it's gone are the days when you think cancer and heart attack, those are old people disease. That's not that. I mean, we've paid claims for ladies 28 years old with cervical cancer, 35 years old with breast cancer, right? I believe we had a young man, I think he was 26, no issues, no medical conditions of heart, and we paid a heart attack claim. Well, sorry, he died of a heart attack. So when we hear all the talk about lifestyle diseases, that's what we're talking about. And that's what having critical illness insurance coverage does. It helps at least put you or your family, or help them maintain that standard of living.
Ms. Supersad, in your position, you deal with people also on a one-on-one basis. Could you add your viewpoint to that on a micro basis?
Well, based on my experience over 22 years, coming out, I've delivered many checks coming out of cancer claims, heart attack, kidney failure, and even blindness. So the importance of really having critical illness coverage has to be done before it happens, because most times you find that the individual comes to you after the fact. So it is important to make sure that the coverage is there before a disaster happens. Otherwise, the expenses on the company, if the key person has a critical illness or is not there anymore, the earnings of the company will be diminished. And of course, you would have the competition stepping in, because the company will be weakened. They will not be able to perform as before. So you need to guard against these situations.
Okay.
If I may just kind of interject, shift the conversation a bit. As it relates specifically to businesses, critical illness is one aspect, you agree?
That's
Yeah.
definitely.
That
yeah.
can affect a business.
Yeah.
But in its broader terms, we hear the term of Keyman insurance. And what is Keyman insurance? And the average person can't tell what is Keyman insurance. So, Clinton, how would you describe Keyman insurance and its importance to a business?
Right. So Keyman insurance is about insuring a very key, important individual in a business. And in terms of their skill, knowledge, and expertise, is very critical to the business success. And I'm very happy you brought up that point, Mike, because when you look at the reasons why businesses fail, we talk about incompetence. We could talk about incompetence in the particular field that the person is operated in, right? You could speak about, I have a little note here, managerial experience. Person could have lack of managerial experience, fraud and theft, and also fire and natural perils. These are some of the reasons why businesses fail. But when you look at the perils in terms of fire and these natural perils, businesses naturally will insure against these things. When you speak about fraud and theft, they put a lot of systems in place to deal with those challenges. However, when you speak about incompetence, lack of managerial experience, and a lack of skill in the particular field that the person may be operating in, it shows that one of the reasons why a business could fail is because of poor management. So therefore, the successful operation of a business would contribute a lot of competent management. So when you speak about the key person within an organization, their knowledge, their skill, their ability to navigate the successful operation of an organization is very, very important and critical. And yet, this is one of the human capital is one of the areas that we don't ensure, right? So the impact of this individual, the success of this individual is very important because, so in other words, if a critical illness happens to this individual, the risk that the company runs is that they could fail. And therefore, ensuring this key individual is very important. So because capital, the capital of the organization, the assets that the organization has is not always a true reflection of the success of the organization. What determines the success of the organization is the people that manage it. And therefore, organizations need to place a high value on these individuals who are key to the organization's success and ensure that these individuals are protected so the organization could continue to be profitable.
I guess if we were to summarize with that, one can say that Keyman insurance is a type of insurance to compensate a business from financial loss
Yes.
as a result of the death or the critical illness of a key employee. And that could be anybody.
Yes.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
many might be able to remember the Kuplanis. Kuplanis is a good example
Yes.
of the absence of having Keyman insurance causing a business to crash.
But Mike also want to add to what Clinton was saying. The fact that if the person passes on or critical illness takes place, the money is paid to the company and not to a spouse or to children, so that the company is able to carry on the operations when the claim is paid. So it's for the benefit of the company.
Yeah. And just to add further, one of the main reasons for the coverage, one is to determine the value of that individual to the organization. So that's how we come up with the coverages that would be necessary. And the main reason for it is, one, to stabilize the organization, to alert creditors that, listen, all is well with the organization, because they want to know that this company could continue for a period of time. Two, it will give the company, the employees of the company, that the confidence that, listen, this company will continue into the future. And it allows the company time to replace that key individual. Because with the loss of a key individual, that talent is not just sitting there waiting, just waiting around for you to, many times, that talent is with another company. And the cost to replace that talent, sometimes that company would have to pay a higher salary as an incentive to get this person to come across to work with me. So because of those higher costs that the company would face, the critical illness coverage or the Keyman insurance is the buffer that the company would rely on to navigate them through that period while all these changes take place.
That being said, is there a particular size of business that would find this coverage essential?
Let me give you an example. Because the well-established businesses who have accountants and lawyers and so on, most times are advised along those lines to make sure they have adequate Keyman insurance. I think the real areas of concern are the small businesses. Sometimes it's a one-man or a 2 or 3 man operation. Just take, for example, a bakery. Right? You may have a bakery, and the owner of the bakery may not be the key person. The key person might be the master baker there. If that master baker fell ill or died, whatever it is, that business could go in the morning out of business. If, however, they had adequate Keyman insurance in place, it means, as Clinton alluded to a while ago, the time it takes them to replace and get another master builder, the business can continue. Or the funds may be able to attract someone from somewhere else because they have the funds to attract it. So that's just a simple example, because many times people think of Keyman insurance as some technical thing, big business. A one-man operation, that one man is a Keyman.
Right.
Yeah? So from the business point of view, they need to make sure. And the sad thing is that just as we individual insurance, whether it's critical illness or life insurance is not taken seriously in a lot of instances, businesses, it is not taken seriously. And if businesses want to continue and ensure that they have longevity, they need to put all these things in place.
Correct.
I would just like to add one example to Mike. Example, perfect live example. Qualified surveyors. 2 qualified surveyors went into practice. So how they decided to operate is one will deal with the technical aspect in terms of getting all the approvals with the ministry and so forth. And the other guy decided I will go into and do all the field work in terms of all the surveying and all of that. And business is doing very well. But the guy on the inside who is doing the technical aspect of the business, he got a critical illness, and most times critical illness could lead to death. And he eventually died. Now business continued to run within the organization. The guy have a lot of business to go and see, but guess what? That business now is affected because the technical person on the inside is no longer there. So, but the business have expenses. They probably have loans, salaries, different things that they still need to pay in spite of this setback, so to speak. So here's where that Keyman insurance come in. That was a key individual to that business organization. So when the funds come in, it could help stabilize some of those expenses while the other surveyor find a suitable replacement.
Right, and if we're talking about, I mean, a one-man show, or you yourself, I mean, we're looking at SMEs, and a lot of the times we have, they are set up one-man shows. You start a business and you're from the ground up and you build it. Now you would find that, I mean, let's face it, business owners running a business never pays themselves what they should be paid. If you are the CEO of your company, I mean, if you have to ask yourself, how much would I really pay someone to do my job? And that could run into maybe, well, over $1 million, a couple $1 million a year, depends on the level of business. And every time I sit with a client or a prospect and I ask them that question, I say, well, how much do you pay yourself? It's nowhere even close to what they should be actually paying themselves. It's like, boy, sometimes I think 3 people have to do my job. Now, in a situation like that, you might be young, 40s, 50s, and you building your business. Now, you haven't even started thinking about succession planning for your business. Your kids might be still in university or still in high school. Your wife may or may not, and I'm just using a man as an example, or it could be vice versa. Your spouse may or may not be involved in the business at all. Now, should something happen to you, that person now has to try to step in to pick up the slack. So, I mean, so Clinton gave an example of a partnership to that extent, but for what I tend to see a lot is, you have the one-man show, whereas the spouse, something happens to you, God forbid you're in a coma, and your spouse trying to figure out what next? What am I supposed to do? What are the expenses of the company? Now, this is where we come in, where we could say, listen, all right, so we have this in place, and we could put in $3, $4, $5 million in place that actually comes into that. That's a serious injection of cash to help stabilize the company.
A good one-man company, Calvin, would be like a doctor practice.
A doctor as well.
He's the main driver of that business. And usually a doctor will have about 3-4 employees.
Right.
And if something, and that doctor, besides the business, is running a home, his own home with his family. And if he is not able to perform his duties, the impact is great. Outside of the employees, his family is affected as well.
Yeah.
That's a perfect example of a one-man.
Well, I should think if somebody is doing the jobs of 3 people, and they need it both in the business sphere and in the family sphere, they would need a lot of help.
Yeah.
So tell me something, how can employers or even the CEO of his own company reduce the risk of NCD to himself and his workers?
You could take this one.
Okay. He needs to ensure that the key individual is covered with Keyman and critical illness insurance. That can be done or on a group health plan, depends on the needs of the situation. And again, I would say it has to be done while you're in good health. So the vital question for the businessman would be, how much would your company stand to lose if the key person has a critical illness or is no longer there to manage the operation of the company?
So, if I may interject, knowing that there is a gap in your business operation is critical. And I think for most of the population in Trinidad today, it's a matter of not knowing. So I think our role really is to educate the business persons, the type of businesses, the individuals, the areas that they need to look at when they are looking at their businesses. The average business, when they set up, they will talk to an accountant, they will talk to a lawyer, and all that, to get all the legal parts in place. And many times they don't focus on the impact of loss of a key person, either because of illness or premature death, to the business. So I think what I'm suggesting here is that business owners have conversations with their respective insurance professionals who will advise, whether it be brokers, whether it be a salesperson, whatever it is, who will advise them accordingly, in the same way they will seek advice from an accountant.
Yes. In addition to what Mike said, one of the ways they could manage NCDs is you have annual, I know companies do this, the executives, they will have annual checkups because they want to ensure that these key people continue to be in good health. For the normal staff, what you could have is health fairs where you could check for hypertension, cholesterol, diabetes. Some women, the pap smears, they do these things in these health fairs. Mike indicated about the education of the staff as well. One area that I think is very critical that you could help manage against NCDs is when you talk about succession planning. Because when an individual becomes critically ill, you want to know that you have somebody within the organization that could replace that individual, right? Now, even though you may seek help in the short term, you may need immediate help to sustain the business, that may come at a higher cost. So you want that probably you could carry this cost for about 2 years or so, so the succession of the individual to replace would become very important. Also, you would like to have cross-training within the relevant departments because somebody goes off critically ill and you just don't know what to do, right? So is it continue to train your staff about what Marilini is doing as an example, and not just my area. If that person becomes critically ill, then I could at least hold on to that position for a short period of time until the individual is replaced. So that's one of the ways you could try and manage critical, because even with the best of efforts, even with all the health fear, even with all the executive plans in terms of making sure a person is in good health, critical illness can and will still happen. And if and when it happens, you have to be able to navigate through that period for the sustainability of the business.
Well, all that you said sounds very proactive.
Yes.
Calvin, you have anything to add?
To me, listen, critical illness and Keyman insurance is such, I mean, it's so huge. I mean, and again, a lot of people, you hear insurance and you think, you don't, other people have a positive approach to insurance. But when you really think about it, if you really take the time and analyze the risk that is associated with your business, because we would see clients would take the loans and they buy all the cranes, the machinery, the cars, the everything, and they would fully, 100% insure those material things. And that's the assets to the company. I mean, and even from a financing perspective, a lot of companies that are providing financing, they insist that those assets are insured. However, they don't insist on the main mechanism, the human resource that actually made those assets a reality. And I mean, if you think about it, I mean, the story of the goose that laid the golden egg, you would take a basket of eggs, you would insure all the eggs and let the goose run wild. I mean, the smart thing is to make sure you insure the goose, right? So that you'd know for a fact that, listen, you can get more. At least you'll be able to produce more assets coming down the road in the future. So we sit with people, and sometimes they just hear insurance and they don't really want to have that conversation. But I actually have, I know of, it's not a friend of mine, somebody that I know that running a nice successful business, $15 million revenue a year, and never had any insurance, and got 3 heart attacks, right, in the space of 2 years. And thankfully, he survived, he's still alive. His revenue went from 15 million down to $4 million because he was basically a one-man show. I mean, you're talking about, now he had about 200-something staff, now that down to about 75. So lives are affected when you don't put things in place. So, I mean, this gentleman cannot function more than 3 hours a day in his business because of the stress level, heart, and those kind of things. Now, ask yourself that question. Can you afford to just work in your business 3 hours a day? I've asked clients, I said, would you love to take a 6 months vacation? And they would say, oh yes, I would. Can you take a 6 months vacation? No, I can't. I said, that's what a critical illness will do to you. A critical illness will keep you out of your business for at least 6 months. And then stretch that out into about a 24-month period, maybe 2 years. So 2 years, you cannot function at your full capacity in your business. So imagine taking 2 years leave in your business. Can your business survive with you not being there? And so if you can't leave your business, the owners will tell you, I cannot even go and buy goods. If I leave to go and shop just to replenish stock, once I travel overseas, I'm on my phone all the time. My roaming bill is ridiculous. I have to be checking. I be checking the cameras. They do that. So you, even though you're not there, you're still trying to manage your business. Imagine they're telling you, you can't even look at your cameras. You can't look at your accounts. You can't have your cell phone. You can't check emails because your stress level will just skyrocket. You could get a heart attack and die. Trust me, you would leave everything down and you would lay in bed all day.
Calvin, I think you mentioned some excellent points that could be included in pre-education programs. And Clinton just mentioned that Ms. Supersad does that for some of her clients. Ms. Supersad, could you give us some more insight into what you do?
One of the important things the company, of course, can have someone come in to speak with the employees regarding healthy lifestyle or food, eating healthy. That is important. And also companies can have support groups for women, because we have found that 70% of the claims comes from cancer, women cancer. Well, women claiming on cancer. So that is important to help with that. And the educating of the age group between 18 and 35 is really important, because 250,000 of those people, that age group, employed in Trinidad and Tobago. I would also want to share, to add to what, to Calvin, what he said, and this is my experience, and it is real. My other half, who was a businessman, had 13 years of dialysis. So, and that was over 3 million paid on health plan. If that health plan was not in place, how could someone survive 13 years of dialysis? But as a businessman, he couldn't continue to work. So where would the funding come from? And he was really fortunate to have those claims paid. And having to face 17,000 a month is not easy. So he just had his portion to pay. So that's the importance of educating people on the importance of having critical illness coverage, why it is important, and how they can benefit from it. Yes.
Just one point I wanted to touch on that Calvin mentioned a short while ago. And business owners, I guess, sometimes take for granted the high stress levels associated with running their business. And as Marilini mentioned, the 70% where women with cancer. When it comes to heart attacks, however, men, it's a very high percentage of men are concerned with heart attacks and heart-related issues. And it's because of the high stress levels. But there are also individuals within an organization that experiences high stress levels based on the job that they do. And high stress level can lead to some of these non-communicable diseases. And one of the things that the company could do, as you mentioned before, being proactive, is to have these EAP programs, employee assistance programs, where individuals can go and speak. Because sometimes a lot of these stress is mental related. And sometimes when you have someone that you could speak to about it, it could help. And at least that organization could lead people in the right, point them in the right direction that could help them manage stress on the job.
Right, and what else? What you can do as well is get a financial checkup. You go to the doctor, get your annual checkup, get your financial checkup annually. Talk to your advisor, because sometimes you talk to people and they say, "Yeah, I have critical illness insurance. I do, or I have life insurance. No, I have enough insurance."
For the business, so take of my stuff.
Yeah, but how much do you really know if you have? I mean, how do you know you have enough? I mean, even from a guardian perspective, when we look at our average on the individual side, our average policy size is $160,000. Now, that is, by no means, that is nowhere even close to what you will need for critical illness. Now, if you are making, or if you have a lifestyle of $500,000 a year, and I'm talking about your mortgage, your cars, school fees, and those things, all the expenses, food, and you have $500,000 critical illness, which is based on our numbers, and we being the largest insurer, it's probably highly unlikely. If you have $500,000, you just basically have 1 year of oxygen, right? So you think you have enough, or you have a policy, but you don't really have enough. So get your financial checkup, talk to your advisors, make sure you sit down and say, listen, this is my situation, this is my income, these are my expenses, this is my business expenses, these are my key people in the company, this is what I have, what can you do for me, right? And that's what we do. We sit with you and we go through those things with you to make sure that everything is on one. Don't think it's expensive. They're saying that, listen, I can't afford this right now. It's better to have some than none at all.
But I'd just adding to what Calvin said there, he said 500,000. But I had a client. Yeah, I had a client. 1.5 million went through in 9 months.
Exactly.
But I can tell you, when you deliver this check, which I delivered in the hospital, there's a level of comfort because that individual,
Sign of relief.
I'm saying hospital, but it was really in nursing home, right? So it's he was able to live comfortably, get medical treatment because of that 1.5 million. And just as it finished, a week after he passed away, but he said to me, I thank you for making me take all these things so that I was able to live a comfortable life without really suffering. So even 500,000, 1.5 million, how much is really enough? No one knows.
No one knows. So just to build a little bit on what Calvin said, Michael, how often should one do their financial checkup in tandem with their annual checkup? Because as we all know, businesses constantly evolve. What would you recommend to the whole spectrum of business, small, medium, and large?
Well, I'd say at minimum at least once every year.
Okay.
Yeah, I totally agree. You see, a lot of the times now, I mean, you actually see in some of the banks, they ask for it. It's not mandatory, but they actually ask that, okay, if you're borrowing, they ask, I mean, the bank's not in the business of, I mean, the banks don't want to take your house. They don't want to take your business. That's not their core business. Their business is money, lending. So as far as they're concerned, if they could protect themselves, then any money that they could just get cash to clear up all of that. And then, I mean, no bank wants to be on the front page of a newspaper saying, I don't know, they put a wife and 3 children outside of a house.
Exactly.
Nobody wants that. So think, or take somebody's business and these people have to go and find somewhere else to make ends meet. So, get your checkup, right? Make sure that you have your house in order. Just like you do your annual medical, make sure. And talk if your agent and calling you every year, then you call him, right? Make sure, or call one of us.
No, because, I mean, according to what Calvin is saying, sometimes the businessman or the individual thinks that you are really harassing, but it's not harassing. It's really seeking their interests and advising once a year. Because when the time passes and something happens, then they're really sorry that they didn't do it before.
Correct.
And just adding to what Marilini just mentioned, you find that when you are successful and you're in good health, you don't be thinking about these things, right? Many times you think that the business will take care of you even when a critical illness happens. But so quickly, the assets, the cash that business has could be diminished. Outside of dealing with your critical illness, the business have to deal with sometimes a fall in income. Because if I know you're ill and I'm a customer of yours, and I'm not certain that you will deliver on your promise, if I pay you, then I will go somewhere else. So therefore, your future income is affected when you are sick. And many times they don't think about that aspect. So here is where we come in. And as Calvin mentioned and all the panelists mentioned before, what do you have to lose? What do you have to lose? The only thing you could do is gain, at least from the information that will be shared, and you could make an educated decision as to the way forward for you. And if you're interested in the continued success of your business, you will make the time to listen and to make a decision for the future of the business.
Yes, Mr. Prasad.
Yeah, so just to add, the family members should be protected as well. So if the businessman passes on, the family is not left with debts of the business. So that's where the Keyman insurance will come in as well. Critical illness
To
coverage.
protect the dependents as well.
Yeah. There are many aspects of Keyman. I mean, I know we just touched on the critical illness aspects, and we kind of touch a bit on the life insurance part of it as well. But I mean, there's so many aspects. I mean, you're talking about you have executive compensation, which I'm sure we'll do at another time, retirement planning. You know, some businesses actually have, like when Clinton spoke about the partnership, some businesses have, you know, buy-sell agreements in place, or you've been thinking about putting a buy-sell agreement in place, or you've spoken to your attorney about it. Getting the agreement in place is one thing. How do you fund it? Where does the money come from? I mean, if Mike and I in business together and we plot our way forward, this is how we're doing it. This is the strategy we're going with for our business. I could end up being in business with Mike's wife, and vice versa. Now, which she may share a very different view to what Mike and I actually agreed upon. So you'd find your whole structure of your business will now change, because you are no longer in business with the person that you started business with. So when you have your buy-sell agreement, yes, that's fine. Where does the money come from to actually buy out the surviving? The surviving shareholder is now able to purchase the shares of the deceased shareholders. So that way, you don't have to end up being in business with somebody that you didn't start being in business with. So that, I mean, that's a whole other topic by itself. There by itself.
Taking into account financial considerations and balancing the cost of the care, even if you have critical illness and Keyman insurance in place, and the concerns of the business, what kind of cost-effective strategies and innovative measures can you all recommend for people going forward?
Well, you see, it's not fair to sit here and recommend a strategy, because as business enterprise have a different landscape, different needs, and so on.
They're all
Could be a
unique.
number of things. So what I will suggest is that it's important that SMEs, small and medium enterprises, recognize, as we said before, that a major part of their business is to ensure that there's business continuity. And as it relates to whether it be Keyman insurance, cover a number of spectrums. Keyman insurance is not a policy, it's a type of policy. You can use different types of insurance to meet the need of a Keyman insurance. But it's important that business owners seek guidance from their insurance advisor, whoever they may be. There are a number of companies in the country that can provide that service. And they seek individual advice as against preset solution. Right? You had asked earlier the question about what is the impact, or how do we see NCDs affecting the country and businesses and individuals. But the reality is this. The economy needs successful SMEs. Yeah?
Agreed.
From a corporate perspective as insurers, I think we have a responsibility to support these SMEs to the extent that if an SME, or if 40 or 50% of the SMEs operating in the country were to fail, there's a serious implication for a number of individuals and the families. It's not just the business, but the business supports several households and so on. So, I mean, if we were to, as a responsible entity, it's important that people understand the impact if proper provisions are not made for these eventualities. It can impact not just the business and the individual, but the country as a whole. Yeah? So I think we have a responsibility to make sure that we address that.
Very well put. It's super sad. You look like you have something to add.
Just a bit. Like has his
Clinton?
comments. I mean, I think we would have covered almost everything.
I think,
But it is really for individuals, for companies, to business owners to be aware of what is happening and what can take and put measures in place. Because as Mike said, it will affect the whole country. People could be sent home, no jobs if a company folds up. And there was so much so much work done in getting a small business off the ground because funding is difficult to get. And after you've worked so hard, everything could just go for naught. And that could be a great disaster, worse than losing equipment.
Yeah.
So,
My closing
Definitely.
statement would be, and not that I'm rushing you to close, but my closing statement would be that, NCDs, non-communicable diseases, it is real, it is happening. We gave the statistics. It is something that exists, and it affects whether it's an individual, a small business, or a large organization. The impact is great when it comes to a small business, small to medium-sized business, and it's important that this business understand that a gap exists and there's a risk to this business failing if they don't put things in place in order to mitigate against that risk that can happen. And therefore, we are here to just educate, just to sensitize you to the fact that this gap exists, and you need to have a further conversation that will put you in a place that would ensure the continued sustainability of the organization and to ensure your continued success. That would be my point.
Thank you for that,
Closing
Clinton. Calvin, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that, protect what you love most, right? You love your business. A lot of people are very passionate and proud about the business that they've started, and they should be, because, I mean, what you've done, not everybody can do it. If it was that easy, everybody would be doing it. So make sure that you protect it. And by protecting it, it means not just protecting the physical structure of it, protect the mechanism that actually made it a reality, which is you, right? Protect yourself. Do your annual checkups. Go and do your medical. So do your medical checkup and your financial checkup every year to make sure that everything is in order. So.
Thank you for that, Calvin. Well, I think this was a very informative session. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for joining us today for Business Insights and for this discussion on critical illness, non-communicable diseases, and Keyman insurance. We hope that you got a better understanding of how this topic operates and how it impacts on small businesses to medium-sized businesses. Actually, it could impact anybody, being from a CEO, one-man show, two-man operation, etc. I would like to thank our panelists, Mr. Michael Austin, Mr. Calvin Mendez, Ms. Marini Supersad, and Mr. Clinton Corbin.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
having us.
Thank you to everyone at the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber who work behind the scenes to make this session possible. Thank you to our online viewers. Thank you, and we look forward to your continued support and interest. Do continue to have a good day.